Hello and welcome to Integrating Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion, or DEAI, in the pre-K through 12 classroom. My name is Sherelle Lewis, and I'm a program manager at the Smithsonian Science Education Center. I'm a Black woman with short Black hair. I'm currently wearing a Black dress and a spotted headband, and I'm sitting in front of a white wall. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to remind you before we get started to please keep your video and audio turned off because we are in a meeting and we will be transitioning into breakout rooms so that you can engage with each other. So at that time, you can feel free to turn on your video and audio, but as we say in the main room in this meeting, please make sure to keep those features turned off. I'd also like to remind you to use the chat at any time during the session. So just so you can go ahead and get some practice, please drop your name in the chat and your location. So where are you from? We want to get to know a little bit more about the folks that are here today. And then finally, auto captioning and live transcript. These should be available on your screen. There should be a closed captioning icon at the bottom of your screen to allow you to turn that feature on. All right, so today we want you to first get to know the presenters. So we're going to spend some time talking about who we are, the work that we do, the missions that represent the organizations that we're coming from, because there are some fellow presenters here today. We'll also define diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. We want to make sure that we're all coming from the same place and talking about the terms and using a common definition for them. And so we're going to be working around the definitions for DEAI. We'll also be talking about 4 Smithsonian programs that promote DEAI in the pre-K through 12 education system. And then finally, we're going to have you develop an action plan so that you can think about the way that you want to address DEAI in your classroom or your sphere of influence. So we want you to think about a problem of practice and develop a goal to address it. And I see the chat is blowing up with lots of different folks from all over. Wonderful, welcome, welcome. So glad that you're here. All right, and so I will take a pause and allow all of the other co-presenters to introduce themselves before we continue on. And I'll start with Dr. Carol O'Donnell. Carol.
Hi, my name is Carol, and I'm the director of the Smithsonian Science Education Center. And I'll turn it over to Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Alcazar Roman. I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon or evening. I just recently stepped down from my role of leading the science assessment efforts in the DC Office of the State Superintendent of Education. I moved to California and just joined a team at UC Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am glad to spend the next few minutes with you, all of you here in this session.
Everyone, my name is Ashley Grady. I am a millennial-aged white woman, and I have light brown hair. I'm wearing glasses and a blue shirt today. Behind me, my background is blurred. I work in the Access Smithsonian office, which is the central office of accessibility at the Smithsonian, and I'm really happy to be here with my colleagues. Thank you. Next slide, please.
All right, let me tell you briefly about the DC Office of the State Superintendent of Education. It's also called OSSE. So OSSE works with urgency and purpose in partnership with education-related systems like the Smithsonian to sustain, accelerate, and deepen progress for DC students. As the state education agency in Washington, DC, OSSE is charged with raising the quality of education of all DC residents. OSSE serves as the district liaison with the U.S. Department of Education and works closely with the district's traditional and public charter schools to achieve the key functions.
Thanks, Daniel. Again, this is Ashley Grady, and just to talk a little bit more about Access Smithsonian, which is the Central Office of Accessibility. The mission of our office is we want to be a catalyst for consistent and integrated inclusive design that provides meaningful access to the Smithsonian museums, our visitors, our content. We work with all 19 museums, National Zoo, and our 9 research centers. And really excited to be able to support our colleagues with the Smithsonian Science Education Center today. And thank you for having me. Next slide, please.
And this is Carol again. I'm going to share with you just a little bit about the Smithsonian Science Education Center. As Ashley noted, we are collaborating along with OSSE in the District of Columbia on several of the projects that we'll be talking about today. So the Smithsonian Science Education Center's mission is transforming K-12 education through science in collaboration with communities across the globe. And we are the only organization within the Smithsonian whose sole purpose is focusing on formal K-12 STEM education. And we do that to serve students, families, caregivers, teachers, schools, school districts, state education agencies, and ministries of education. We were founded in 1985 by both the Smithsonian Institution and the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine. Our name at the time was the National Science Resources Center. And then in 2010, the Smithsonian took us over fully because we'd always been housed in the Arts and Industries building, and changed our name to the Smithsonian Science Education Center. So we have 3 goals at the Smithsonian Science Education Center, which we'll be talking about with you today. The first is innovation, which is promoting active inquiry-based K-12 STEM teaching and learning. The second is focused on inclusion, ensuring equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in STEM education. And then finally, sustainability, advancing K-12 STEM education for sustainable development. And as you can see from the image, none of these goals are treated separately. They are fully integrated. And when we work on one, we're working on all of them. So I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague who is going to talk about defining diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. Sherelle?
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. We wanted to start this conversation by learning a little bit about what you believe and how you define these terms. So we are going to, next slide, ask you to define the terms diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion by accessing a Padlet. So you can use the link that will be dropped in the chat in a moment, or you can use this QR code to travel over to our Padlet that has a depiction of DEAI that we want you to reflect on as you define the terms. So click, if you will, on the, when you get to Padlet, click on the image that you see there, and you can enlarge it and really think about how what you see defines those terms, and then put that in your own words on the Padlet. So I'll give you all a moment to travel over there, and then I'll pull up the screen and see what some of our definitions look like. Thank you. I see some folks have made it over to Padlet. Just waiting to see some answers populate. Yes, great, great. Yep, different views and perspectives within a given room. I see goes beyond just inclusion and acceptance. Absolutely. another moment to let some folks answer. I know sometimes it can be tricky trying to put all of this in your own words, but a limited group of people, places, ways of thinking, okay? Diversity is embracing multicultures, individual personalities, unique qualities, different points of view, absolutely. Same opportunities for equity. Here I see giving students the size shoes that they wear compared to just giving them shoes. I love that analogy there, or that metaphor. Everyone is welcome. It's also in Braille. Absolutely. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that. Everyone has the same opportunity to engage when we're talking about accessibility. And then for inclusion, I see someone put inviting individuals of all backgrounds to join a group. There is an extra chair for everyone to have a seat at the table. Absolutely, yes. I love that you all are using the image in your definitions. Wonderful. All right. So, well, thank you for participating in that. I really appreciate that. I hope you appreciate this visual as well as a way to help you define the terms diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. So we'll keep moving forward. Oh, go back one more. Thank you. So the way that the Smithsonian Science Education Center defines diversity is all the ways that people are different and the same at the individual and group level. Right, so we all have obviously different ideas, different ways of thinking, but we also want to make sure that we appreciate all of that. And so that's what diversity is all about, appreciating all the differences that we share in all the ways that we are alike. Equity, fair and just treatment of all members. Someone stated, just giving students shoes is not enough. You have to give them the shoes that they need, that fit. So making sure that everyone has what they need is so important in equity. Accessibility, giving equitable entry to everyone along the continuum of human ability and experience. So we really want to think about not just giving someone the opportunity, but making sure they can actually get to a place where they can fully participate and be considerate of all of the diversity of abilities that exist. Can we go back one more? We just have to go over inclusion. Thank you. And then there's inclusion, ensuring diverse individuals fully participate in all aspects of the work, including decision-making processes. So thinking about the depiction on Padlet, everyone is able to engage in this dinner party. They all have what they need. They're all different. They all bring something different to the table. They're all able to access what's on the table, but they all feel included. Next slide. And so I'll hand it back over to Carol, if you will.
Yeah, so I want to reflect on some of the things that we heard this morning from Secretary Bunch and our new Undersecretary for Education, Dr. Monique Chisholm. Many of the principles of diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion that we see at the Smithsonian and the Smithsonian Science Education Center are built on the principles that DEAI, diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, must be integral to anything that we do, to the conception, to the design, and the implementation of education programs. And these education programs must be contextualized in the communities relevant to the learners. As Sherelle shared with us, the people that were at the animals, the stuffed animals at this having tea at the table are all very different from one another. And it's important to contextualize any of the work that we do so that it's relevant to the people that are at the table. Now, the learning experience also has to be centered on the whole child, and it must be culturally respectful and appropriate. And the work must include multiple vectors, addressing students not only within schools in formal settings, but in their community, at home with their families or their caregivers, whether they're in school or whether they're out of school. And the Smithsonian depicts this broadly because we are an institution that bridges the gap between formal and informal learning. And finally, the outputs of diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion must translate into social and economic outcomes. As you'll learn about from Secretary Bunch, the Our Shared Future initiative also talks about race and wealth. So is everything that we're doing in education actually leading to social mobility, to economic mobility? All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about 4 of the Smithsonian programs that we believe promote diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in pre-K-12 education. And the next slide lists these 4 programs, and each one of us is going to talk about a different program. So the 4 programs are diversifying the STEM teacher workforce. The second, sparking girls' interest in STEM to prepare them for the future workforce. Zero barriers in STEM education, which focuses on accessibility and culturally responsive teaching. Next slide. Sherelle?
Great. So before we share the work that we do that's focused on diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, we want to learn a little bit more about what your interests are. So we have a quick poll, if you wouldn't mind just sharing if you're most interested in attracting and retaining a diverse pre-K through 12 teaching workforce, if your interest lies in promoting girls and women in STEM classrooms, using universal design and inclusive design practices to support students with disabilities, or promoting culturally responsive teaching. So a poll should pop up and we'll give you a second to respond to it. I see 3 and 4. Okay. I see folks putting it in the chat. That's great. 4, 4, wonderful. Lots of 4s. Okay. Okay. Great, great. Thanks. Thank you so much for your responses. We got a 2. All right. Wonderful. So yeah, we all are coming with lots of different interests, and that's great. So I'll go ahead and kick it off to Daniel to share a little bit more about the first program that we're going to share with you around diversifying the STEM teaching workforce.
Thank you, Sherelle. This is Daniel again. Let me tell you about how the Smithsonian Science Education Center, or OSSE, works on promoting diversity in the STEM teaching workforce. Starting in 2017, the OSSE has planned and implemented an annual event called the STEM Education Summit, building a coalition for attracting and retaining a diverse STEM teaching workforce. During this summits, school, district, and state teams learn about best practices and work together to create action plans they implement in their own context to increase the number of pre-K to 12 STEM teachers from underrepresented populations. For example, over the years, district and school teams from DC have participated, created, and implemented their plans to better support their own STEM teachers of color, and also provided mentorship for other teams. Can you go to the next slide, please? So during the summit, each leadership team works on creating a logic model that will guide the implementation of strategies for either attracting or retaining a diverse STEM teacher workforce. They also work on empowering teacher leaders to be change agents in their school districts. They meet other teams and work on fostering a community of professionals that are all committed to improving education for all students. And they also are provided with a mentor that supports the implementation of their plan. Can you please go to the next slide? And as you can see here in the map, since 2017, we have engaged 96 teams in 27 states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. This includes 65 unique districts with an impact of over 16.5 million students. Our goal is that this effort will help support the recruitment and retention of 30,000 teachers with diverse backgrounds by 2030. Lastly, we want to share with you this resource. It's called Fostering Change Playbook. In this document, you will find successful practices for increasing the recruitment and retention and promotion of diverse STEM teachers in your districts. We invite you to use the QR code or the link that's shared on the chat to access that resource. Thank you.
So the second program that we're going to talk about, and again, keep in mind that these programs, while seemingly separate, are built on the same premise of helping school districts identify the problem of practice within their region or their school district or school that relates to diversifying or diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion. This second program is focused on promoting girls and women in STEM education and in STEM in general. So as we know, 57% of all professionals in the United States are women. And yet only 47% of women make up the sciences, 25% are in computer fields or math fields, and sadly, only 15% are in engineering or architecture. And that number in engineering has declined over the years instead of increasing. So one of the projects that we're involved in, focused on girls and women in STEM, manufacturing, and design, is in order to provide access, exposure, and resources to young girls to engage them in science and innovation and technology and design. And much of that work around design we've learned from our own colleague at the Smithsonian, who is the director of the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt Museum on design. We also engage students in problem solving and hopefully are able to directly engage them with STEM professionals so that they can see themselves and others. Now, two of the resources that you see here that Cody has also placed up on the chat are resources that are freely available to all of you that engage students in 45 minutes to 1 hour lessons on STEM education, such as Dr. Drew, Density and Diffusion, Giving Life Through Blood Research, which is a lesson that helps students to understand these physics concepts, but does it in the context of Dr. Drew, who's one of the individuals who's highlighted in our exhibits at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The second resource that you see up here, and again, there are many resources at this link that Cody, I hope, is providing to you, or you can access through this QR code, is called Stories of Women in STEM at the Smithsonian. And that resource, Stories of Women in STEM, is a story of a dozen women at the Smithsonian currently working in different STEM fields and design, as well as stories that have been told about women in STEM in history, told through the objects in the Smithsonian's collection. The next program, I'm going to turn it over to our dear colleague, Ashley, who is going to talk about the Zero Barriers in STEM Education program.
Thanks, Carol. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Ashley Grady, and I have the great pleasure of being an advisory committee member on the Zero Barriers in STEM Education Initiative, which is a partnership between the Smithsonian Science Education Center, DC Public Schools. It's funded by General Motors and the Smithsonian Accessibility Innovation Fund. And the program aims to support educators. This is all about helping teachers so that they can promote inclusion and accessibility in their classrooms and provide opportunities for their students with disabilities to have access to STEM education. And we offered support to a group of teachers through professional learning opportunities, giving them access to high quality curriculum, materials, tools, resources, and also helping them with leadership development, helping them feel as though they could actually create change within their classroom and also within their schools. Examples of some of the ways that we provided these supports to teachers were we hosted a 4-day professional development workshop that was led by the Smithsonian Science and Education team with a little bit of support from the advisory committee members. And at that workshop, teachers learned how to incorporate UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, into existing Smithsonian science curricula. So rather than advising that they create all new materials, we wanted them to think about how can they adapt and modify existing resources with inclusion and accessibility of students with disabilities as their priority. Another example is we hosted what we called the Zero Barriers in STEM Summit, Accessibility and Inclusion Summit, which was a 2-day event on consecutive Saturdays, where we worked with teachers to help them identify a problem or a challenge and create an action plan on how to develop outcomes or develop buy-in, which would lead to successful outcomes, how to evaluate their success. Sherelle's going to talk a little bit more about action plans in just a minute. But whereas the professional development workshop was more about curricula and lessons, the summit was much more about pedagogy and philosophy and creating change within a school. And the final thing that we did is we really wanted to create ongoing support for teachers. I was a special ed teacher for many years before I found my way to the Smithsonian. And, you know, a lot of times I think teachers, we operate, sometimes it feels like we're on an island, like we're by ourselves, and we don't always have that community. Especially this initiative was taking place entirely in the last 2 years. So it was almost entirely during the COVID-19 pandemic. So trying to help teachers feel supported through having mentors, trying to provide them with pre-recorded webinars, opportunities for community engagement so that they felt connected to each other and also connected to this project. So next slide, please. Thank you. So on the screen, you can see that this is a copy of another amazing resource, which thank you, Cody, for dropping the link in the chat. And you can also scan it, scan the QR code. And on the screen is an image of the cover of the Accessibility and Inclusion Workbook, which was created by the Zero Barriers team. And this workbook, which again, available for download, it is fully accessible. So, you know, it has bookmarks, great reading order, alt text, and for all images, it can be used by screen readers. We wanted to create a document that was actually going to be functional for teachers and could help them incorporate the principles and ideas behind the Zero Barriers initiatives, incorporate those ideas in their classroom. So it was created by our advisory committee, which was made up of 17 experts in our field, you know, education thought leaders, pre-K through 12, and also post-secondary educators, accessibility specialists, members from General Motors, some of our other sponsors. So it was a really diverse group of people. And we wanted to make sure that we provided clear and concise strategies. The workbook is broken up by chapters, which things like how to use digital tools like QR codes, how to encourage choice for your students in their classrooms, multisensory learning, reinforcing literacy and language within the classroom, and just creating an inclusive and accessible culture in your classroom. So we really wanted to make sure that anyone accessing this workbook could actually take the principles and idea and take them back to their own classroom. This was the kind of thing that I wish I had many years ago when I was a teacher. And I think the other great thing is the workbook came together through largely in part Sherelle, because we had 17 different advisors all writing, and Sherelle magically found a way to make it sound concise and cohesive. So always give credit to our partners there. But we really hope that this workbook can be a spark that causes teachers from all around the country to think about inclusion, especially for students with disabilities and accessibility in their classroom. And instead of always thinking about creating specialized resources or separate resources, how can we create opportunities for STEM education that are born inclusive and born accessible? And I think with that, over to you, Sherelle.
Thank you, Ashley. That was a wonderful explanation of Zero Barriers program. Love, love, love. But I have the luxury of talking about some of the work that we do that's related to culturally responsive pedagogy that we offer. So we have professional development, between 1 and 2 day virtual professional developments that focus on culturally based pedagogy, and they are meant to help educators identify ways to appreciate their students' diversity, diverse viewpoints and backgrounds. It's also an opportunity for educators to identify their own implicit bias and the way that that affects the relationships they have with their students and how they connect with their students. Thinking about recent research, the US Census data said in 2020 that the US was more ethnically and racially diverse than it's ever been. And so having these conversations around cultural relevancy, responsiveness, and sustainability is so, so important to our students to become engaged in their communities, to help them become more aware of the socio-scientific issues that are affecting their communities and helping them to build the adequate tools and understanding to be able to, find solutions to the challenges that they are seeing in their communities. But really just to make sure that they feel like what they bring to the table is validated, their prior knowledge, their understanding, it's validated in the classroom and it feels relevant to their lives. But these PDs are also an opportunity for educators to hear about the impact of doing this work well. So we have STEM professionals come and talk about their diverse backgrounds and the ways that they were supported and the role models they had that helped them to pursue STEM and feel accomplished and be accomplished in professionals currently. So we are actually hosting a professional development that's focused on culturally based instruction in STEM classrooms in October. So I'm just going to quickly drop the link to, that upcoming event in the chat so that you can read more about the professional development and learn more about what we're doing to support teachers in that regard. We are focused on not just culturally based instruction, but also the ways that it ties into universal design for learning. Because as Carol mentioned earlier in the session, DEAI efforts are not individual, they're not isolated from each other, they are integrated, they're interconnected. And so we thought that having a professional development that addresses culturally based practices and making sure that students feel like their viewpoints are validated in the classroom, it connects so nicely with universal design and making learning accessible. And so we've tried to combine those things into this PD, but please do take some time, check out the website and register for the event. It's going to be a great, great experience. Yes, I love that what you dropped in the chat, Anthony. It is important for teachers to be culturally responsive in order to serve all students. Absolutely. Next slide, please. And so on our website, you'll see what we call just-in-time professional learning videos, They were created to support STEM educators who work directly with English language learners. So these videos provide ideas and activities to help educators feel successful and help their students to feel successful as they acquire new STEM knowledge and vocabulary. And they're great videos that demonstrate how to validate, as I mentioned before, that prior knowledge that students bring into their classroom. They validate that, and they validate ways that students understand their ways of knowing. Before we ask students to take on the work of retaining new information and facts, we should make sure that what they bring to the table is validated. And so these videos demonstrate how to do that very well. And then most importantly, they aid in creating safe spaces where students can be their authentic selves and remain curious. Because at the end of the day, we want our students to feel comfortable and safe being who they are, bringing their full identity to the spaces that they're learning in. And we want them to be encouraged to ask questions. Next slide. So now you've heard a lot about the work that the Smithsonian Science Education Center does, but we want to give you some time to be reflective and think about the ways in which you want to address DEAI in your own work. So in order for us to do that, we're going to ask you to work on an action plan. But what is an action plan? Well, it's a document that is clear and concise and talks about what you want to change and how you plan to change it. To me, it's a roadmap for success. And the benefits of using an action plan are that it helps you to focus on the conditions that are actually causing the problems that you see. And it allows you to contextualize that issue and make it specific to you. And finally, it allows you to be intentional about the work that you plan to do. Sometimes we can be motivated to just jump and go do a thing, but action plans require us to stop and think about what really is going to change the problems that we want to address. And then the one thing that I love about action plans is that it requires you to think about all of the stakeholders, all of the individuals who have influence, who or what will impact the success of your plan. So this could be school leaders, this could be families, it could even be the school policies, the school culture, or the norms. Those are all the things that are going to make a major difference in the work that you want to do. And so an action plan allows you to think about those things at the beginning. Next slide. So in a moment, we're going to have you go into breakouts and work on this action plan template. And you'll receive a link to a Dropbox that has the action plan template that we want you to use in a moment in your breakouts. But before we actually have you go do the work, I want to make sure that you are clear about each component of the action plan. So first, we have your problem. That's the thing you want to fix. It's what needs to be changed, all right? And then you have your goal. When you write your goal, you want it to be a SMART goal. And SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound, right? So you want to be specific and be able to measure your progress, but you also want to make sure it's something that you can accomplish, and it needs to meet the need of the problem you've identified for yourself. And finally, you want to create some boundaries for yourself. So you need to make sure that you have a clear beginning and end point in your action plan. And next, you're going to mosey on over to outcomes, which can be short-term and long-term. Outcomes are the indirect consequences of the work that you are doing. And so the way I like to think of it is not just who has been reached or impacted by the work that you do, but how have their lives changed? How have they benefited from you doing this work? And you may be asking, well, why would you start with outcomes before you list your activities and your owners and your resources? Well, we work on outcomes before we do those things, before we list actions and owners and resources, because we want to think about how the activities that we want to do will align with our impact as well. And so it gives us some guardrails to really think about the activities that will give us the greatest impact. And then finally, we have our resources and our owners and our activities and owners and our resources. So how will you reach your goal? These are the things that you're going to do. And who or what do you have available to you that can assist you now? And so with that, please go ahead and pull up the template if you haven't done it already. We're going to have you create an action plan that addresses the problem of practice related to diversity, equity, accessibility, or inclusion in your classroom. And you've already shared with us the things that you're interested in, the programs that you're interested in. And so I'm wondering if some of that will be reflected in the problems that you identify in what you put in your action plan. Like I said, you have a Dropbox link. There are sample action plans in there for you to reference. So feel free to pull them up as well. And your action plan template, make sure you download it so that you can actually edit it from Dropbox. All right, I will wait for us to move into our breakouts.
All right, I think we should be ready to go, Sherelle. So hopefully this works.
Okay.
great. And if you are not receiving a notification to go to a breakout room, that means you're going to stay here with me in the main room. It was just easier. We wanted to make sure that we had our captioner. So if you didn't receive a notification, you should be here with me, Ashley. And I see some people here. So I'm hoping that you all are still here. And I realize we are very short on time right now. It is almost 6:50, but I think the most important thing that I wanted to do, and feel free to use the chat. I see Amy is cooking dinner, or she sent me that message. Amy's a good friend of mine, a colleague from Smithsonian Science Education Center. Sherelle was amazing and gave you the Dropbox link. I'd love to hear, and again, put this in the chat if you're comfortable. Thinking first about what's a challenge, what's a problem, thinking about the examples that we talked about, like in Zero Barriers, for example. Our problem that we needed to think about is that students with disabilities didn't have access to STEM education. So we needed to find a way to change that and create an action plan so that teachers felt like they could actually provide that inclusivity and that accessibility. So do any of you have any ideas about potential challenges or problems, just based on what you heard today? And I am going to
Welcome back. I hope there were some great conversations happening in the breakouts. I know I had fun in mine. So
Armando was just in the middle of a really good thought.
Carol.
I was going to say, I saw one participant come back and it was like, no, I was just about to say something amazing, life-changing.
Someone took the hook and yanked this back in. It's all good though. No hard feelings. So we are, I think, a minute away from being at time, so I don't want to go over. Carol, did you have some words? I believe you had some words you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, before we wrap up, everything that we do within our diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion work, we have it sponsored. So we receive gifts and grants from others to be able to do this. And so all of these programs are free. And I want to thank the public-private partnerships we're engaged in with Johnson & Johnson through the Girls and Women in STEM program, General Motors, the Zero Barriers in STEM Education, along with Smithsonian Access, the Shell, who has helped us with 6 years of this diversifying the STEM teaching workforce. And all of them are participating in supporting this upcoming culturally relevant pedagogy that summit that Sherelle told you about. So we just really appreciate the fact that we have people who have helped us over the years sponsor these programs, and that means that nobody has to pay for the mentors or attending these sessions or even flying to DC. So we just want to thank our sponsors for their help.
Yes, thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go into the questions portion that we had planned. But thank you all so much for joining us today. I did leave my email in the chat. So if you do want to follow up and learn more about the DEAI work that we're doing, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to see if you're able to take these action plan action plan templates that we provided and use them. And I'd love to learn more about how you do that. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. And they might cut us off.